Anytime now. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, welcome back to the Age of Warfare podcast. I am Civilian Anxious Maximus. That is the gate, Aiden Cordier. And we have a fun episode for you guys. We're getting away from what we normally discuss, which is history. I mean, we're talking about history, but it's kind of a different kind of history. We're going to be talking about the history of Halloween because, after all, Halloween is this Thursday, and I know Halloween can be controversial to some people. So trust me, I know firsthand how controversial it can get. So we're going to talk about what the actual history of Halloween is and why it's you might be surprised it's not all what you think it is. But of course, before we get started, Aiden, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Everything's ticking along nicely here. It's the weather's calmed down after all the storms we've had. So yeah, that is everything's just sort of normal, which is bizarre. So you're just waiting for something to happen now.
Yeah, right. But it's not the worst thing in the world, you know.
Yeah,
It's that's not a bad thing that things are normal. That's sometimes
yeah.
it's something. Sometimes it's better for nothing to happen than something to happen.
Yeah, appreciate
So,
the quiet times. Yeah.
yes, exactly. All right, so Halloween. When we think of Halloween, we think of trick or treating, jack o' lanterns, ghosts, horror movies, horror books. Which I write horror books, so I'm wearing the Fox shirt. So so go figure, right? When I'm writing right now, that's all we figure. But this time, but of course, if you talk to the white people, that's Halloween could be a time of joy and celebration and all that. However, for some people, Halloween is actually the opposite. They actually think is it's actually a cuss holiday, and it's something you should even you're not even allowed to celebrate. So, I wanted to get into what the history of Halloween is, and how do we get to this divide between those who celebrate Halloween and those who think it's just a cuss holiday.
It's quite an interesting one because there's you've got a lot of the Christian holidays in the early church, obviously, when they were converting people. They needed time periods where that people would remember and places that people would know of where they'd gather. So you often had a lot of sort of the supplanting of the pagan ideals with the
Hmm.
Christian ones over the top of it, just as a way of you're Christians now. You're coming here at this time of year, so let's come to you and do that where you are, and have this at a time where you're going to remember,
Hmm.
so we can do this sort of a transition, as it were. Halloween's one of the weird ones where
Right.
it isn't that. It's sort of but it's become that. It's sort of melded together, but it wasn't originally a this is a thing over it, because it's All Hallows Eve. Is obviously the original title, which is a Christian festival. It's about remembering those who died, and like saints, or people
Hmm.
that you've known, people in the community, family members, everything like that. It's a sort of remembrance, as it were. Um,
Hmm.
of people, and that's really the basis of how the church looked at it. Whereas you get pagan traditions around the same sort of time period as well, and some of those come from the distance between the other realm and our realm is smaller at that time of year, so that the veil, it's sometimes called, can be broken, and you can have the supernatural creatures coming in as well. So that's where you end up with this starting to be mixed as well, because the Christian traditions about dead people, and then with the pagan traditions, they're about the potential for the dead people's ghosts to come through as well. So we kind of melded them over the years, which is where you start to get this. Well, is it something that Christians can celebrate? Is it something Christians can't celebrate? And if they do, how do they celebrate it? And how people have picked it up and run with it. And obviously, in modern times, Halloween is just seen as another festival. It's the fun things.
Right.
It's like it's just like Christmas. Christmas has a serious part to it, and everyone knows about Christmas.
Yeah,
Or
like
Easter has a
Christmas is the
serious
same
part to
thing.
it. People know about the serious parts of it. But then you have it's like the more commercial side of it, or just the
Right.
happiness side of it.
It's become too commercial.
Yeah, so you've got this commercial veneer over the top of it, and Halloween's exactly the same. It's had this commercial
Right.
over the top of it. Whereas Christmas kept kind of the ethos of this celebration. And obviously Boxing Day, when it comes to Christmas, comes from giving the servants the day off and a box of things to take home to their families. So that's been melded into that. It's about being kind, giving gifts, being part of being kind to people and giving people something, helping people out. It gets the ethos. Easter, where the Easter Bunny comes into it, we do not know. But that's possibly linked to some more pagan things about spring festivals as well.
Right.
Even the egg is a symbol of birth as well, and obviously Easter being about rebirth in Christianity. So you still got those links. Whereas Halloween is just the only bit that's really come through is this dead bit, and then the commercial side of it, obviously, is all the costumes and the trick or treating and all of that. That
I just find it funny. I just find this funny though. Christians, we tend to celebrate Easter like it's a grand holiday, with the eggs and all that. But yet Easter is kind of a pagan holiday when you really think about it. It's pagan in nature. And so the same thing could be said about Halloween. So why is it that we put Easter on a pedestal, right? Even though it's a pagan holiday, but yet you have another pagan holiday, Halloween. And Christians want to put it, we want to bury it 6 feet under, like it's the bane of our existence. It always confused me. I mean, I'm a Christian myself, but I'm kind of I don't know how to say it. I'm fringe. Like, there's certain things I believe in, but there's other things that I don't know how to explain it, man. I don't want to get too deep into it either, but the thing about Halloween, though, Aiden, is that the real origin of Halloween dates back all the way to the Celts of Northern Ireland. No, ancient Ireland. Excuse me, the ancient Ireland. I don't know. I don't know I don't know who you called them back then. I know.
Originally, you'd start with the Celts. The Celts came over. That was just after the Beaker peoples, and you had the.
I know the Romans called them. I know they call Ireland Hibernia. The Romans called that Ireland Hibernia. The Romans. Hibernia.
That's Scotland's Hibernia, because you get as a Scottish football team, Hibs as well. But it was all linked because, weirdly enough, the Scots, as a tribe that came over, they were Irish. So it's that in archaeology, it's often called the Celtic fringe, because it's the edge of Europe and it's this sort of angle that goes across. It even includes Western Spain and Portugal as well. So you've got this fringe edge, and then obviously Brittany as well, so in the far west areas as well. So you do get this this Hibernian word comes through into Ireland as well, and that's all connected up with the Scots because it's all essentially the same Celtic tribes moving around before everything starts getting formalised later on. So that's when you get to the Saxons and things. But there is this, as you say, there's this lot of this Irish tradition that's been pulled into it, and I think part of that is because of the large amount of Irish people that went to the US as well, and they've kept those original traditions alive in the US, and that's why we associate it with the Irish Celtic side.
The original Halloween was they actually celebrated the New Year. It was actually celebrated November the 1st to celebrate the New Year. So we normally celebrate New Year's on January the 1st, right? I mean, back then they celebrated on November the 1st, and because it marked the transition from the warm, fruitful summer months to the cold and dark winter, and it was a period that was most associated with death. And don't forget, back then we didn't use the Georgian calendar; we used the Junian calendar. Don't forget.
And the completely wrong calendar that was so messed up.
Yeah, right.
This, as you're saying about this with the New Year's celebrated on the 1st. So we usually celebrate on the 31st is The first is also the start of that period of mourning and remembrance within the church as well. So they fit together. So obviously there has been some sort of alignment between the original Celtic ideals and the 2 seconds. I just need to do something there because I keep freezing. There we are. That should help. You get this alignment with the dates in that. Halloween is an eve. It is therefore it's like what's happening? It's like Christmas Eve. That you have essentially, and it's one of those weird ones that is we're celebrating an eve. It's like Christmas is more important than Christmas Eve, whereas Halloween it's the Eve celebration that's more important. It's a bit like that's where this connection between New Year's comes in. Because New Year's Day, people don't really do anything. It's New Year's Eve that people do things and they wait until the end of it, and it's that same thing. It's why it's celebrated as an Eve event of we're about to change into a different time as well. And as we know, a lot of the pagan and Celtic mythology is all about something called liminal states. It's about transition from one place to another. Things like beaches, the edge of forests, the ponds in the woods, things like that. It's when you look into Celtic mythology, those things come up repeatedly time and time and time again. There's creatures in the woods that don't come out. They can only come to the edge of the woods, but they can't come out of the woods because that is a barrier. It's all about the barriers.
Hey, Jerry, what's up, man? Thank you for joining us. This is a top. I mean, we know we talk history, but this is actually a topic you might enjoy. We're talking about the history of Halloween, and we put into a history, but like I was telling Amy before the show, I'm a horror artist, so it's kind of tough for me because I live in a ultra conservative neighborhood when it comes to religion. So it gets a little interesting for me. Let's put it that way. but anyway, I wanted to double down on the idea that Halloween is part of Christianity because Halloween is thought to have influences for Christian beliefs and practices. Remember the English word Halloween, right? Comes from All Hallows Eve, before the evening of the Christian holidays, All Saints Day and All Souls Day, which is the Catholic holiday. I will also add that there's a significant difference between the Catholics and the Protestants, and I think it's more the Protestants who have something against Halloween. The Reformed Church. So the Catholics are a little more free because they kind of understand that some of the influence came from paganism. And there's another thing I wanted to bring up, Aiden. Don't forget when the Celts were celebrating their Halloween, the Romans, they were just converting into monotheism, which is, believing in one God. But they brought the word of Christianity was only being invented in ancient Rome.
It's one of those things. So one of the interesting things to think about is you said the difference between Catholic and Protestant ideals, and one of the clearest evidences of this is the crucifix. So in Catholic Church, you have Jesus on the cross.
Correct.
Remember that he died for this with that. Whereas with the Protestant reforms, you'll often see a cross, not a crucifix, because it's about him being risen. So it's more
exactly
about that part of the whole Easter.
So
that side of it. So that kind of explains this connection between the Catholic Church are quite happy to look at death and the other side and everything like that, whereas the more Protestant ideals are rebirth, going forward.
Right. You want to forget about that and just move forward. So I mean, the thing about it, Ethan, that there's really no wrong or right answer. I mean, you can see the pros on both sides, but I mean, it's a significant difference for sure. I mean, I grew up Catholic. Just to be open, I got nothing to hide. I grew up Catholic. I converted to Protestant only because the Catholic Church was, it kind of screwed me over many times, unfortunately, with their what's that word? That connect on nations. What's that? It starts with a T. Yeah,
It's in my brain somewhere, but I can't think of it right this
yeah,
second.
yeah. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way as I got. I'm, I mean, it's kind of a complex idea for me because even though I used to be Catholic, I'm Protestant now, but I still believe in Halloween. I still believe there's certain things I still believe in that that are frowned upon about it. So it's interesting. Jerry brought up an interesting point. There's never not a crossover in history in the Halloween between all religions and pagan. Yeah, some people want to say that pagans kind of brought now the holidays are pagan. They influenced by the pagans.
And the irony being that holiday is a contraction of holy day. And it was a Christian idea to formalize them as well. And I think it's partly that formalization. It's like I was talking about earlier with the people were doing these things, therefore have that. There's a lot of the early Saxon churches as well were built where the pagan shrines would be. It would be they get rid of the pagan shrine, they put them there because that's where people went. It's also partly supplanting it and getting rid of the pagan ideals. But it's why you end up with churches in these I was talking about the liminal states of these edge places as well. And an interesting thing to go on for that, a slight tangent, is a lot of the county boundaries in the UK, because that comes from the Saxon kingdoms. There was a whole thing about you bury your dead at prominent places, so your boundaries are generally going to be prominent places anyway. But a lot of the Saxon cemeteries would often be along their borders, and I can't remember the exact reasons why, but it was a big thing. So if you look at the Saxon cemeteries and you start plotting them all, you often find that it just sort of lines all of the county boundaries. It becomes very difficult doing archaeology on that because it's two different jurisdictions. But you get this idea of the other world and that difference between it. If you look at any of the things like in horror, when you go into the horror things, but you're looking more of a Celtic supernatural as well. You get it all in the same places, and having that linked. It's one of the things in horror I like is when they bring up this idea of this connection between this specific holiday and the Christians celebrating it, but it's also a time where this original pagan belief that happened in this place comes up as well. That you have this deep connection there. I mean, it's something our society knows about. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in films and books. It's always been a thing. It's just for a couple of thousand years, it's been a real a thing that people have thought about those places doing that as well. And it's a lot of the things we do are still pagan, even though nominal Christians.
And that's why I try to open up some people. I want to show you something. Hold on, I want to share the screen here. Yeah, see, this is Halloween on the History Channel. On occasion, History Channel can still be a good source of information. It's now about ancient aliens and all that. But it says Halloween's origins date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain.
Samhain is Samhain.
Yep.
There's other ways to pronounce it, but Samhain's one of the more common ones.
So it was a time of year associated with death. The Celts believed that on the night before the New Year, the boundaries between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of October 31st, they sent everybody a show in when it was believed that the ghosts of the dead returned to Earth. So basically, it was their version of reincarnation.
Yeah, it's this is what I was talking about before with this the veil, as it were. You get this connection between that actually goes to trick-or-treaters. All right, so this is a very interesting connection between that there would be, to frighten the ghosts and spirits away, that you would dress up as something horrific or something like them, so they thought that there were no living people around. So dressing up as a ghost or a zombie, I know zombies far more modern, but as a ghost is there to do that. It's the root of things like the jack-o'-lantern as well, is to confuse the spirits that are coming through. And that is still something that was very big within Christianity as well.
And this is a good point by Jerry. I hate to cut you off, but it's a good point by Joey. He says
Okay.
when Catholicism was on the rise, many holidays they incorporated into the church. They adopted aspects of pagan holidays to make new converts more comfortable. Yes, when they converted.
Exactly. Yeah,
It's a good
exactly.
point. They they, they,
Perfectly
they,
on the
they, they
money.
they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. Also, we have Dungeon Dan. Hey, Dungeon Dan, thank you for
Hey,
coming on over. It says, do you have any insight on the practice of paying off the spirits and creatures to the dark with gifts to leave you alone?
this is connected to what I was saying about with the jack-o'-lanterns. It's similar to leaving out cookies for Santa and a carrot for Rudolph at Christmas on Christmas Eve. You get all of these things brought in together. So do you know the history of horseshoes and why horseshoes are considered lucky and why they're actually used? As that's all to do with horseshoes made of iron, and iron prevents like cold iron prevents supernatural creatures from entering a home as well. There's all sorts of things, like if the horseshoe has to be a certain way up, but that came later. It was just the horseshoe was the most common form of iron that would be discarded. So you'd have that above a threshold to prevent spirits from entering your home as well. And it's one of the reasons that it's become a symbol of marriage as well, because with marriage, then theoretically you then move in together and you have your own home, and it's giving someone something to protect against these evil spirits at Halloween, particularly, but other times of the year as well. Is to keep the evil away, and that's why it is that symbol. So there's paying off creatures is there's certain parts that it's like if you go into certain stories about original paganism, the a lot of that comes from the outside. Obviously, it's like Julius Caesar, we've talked about before, who painted all the druids out to be bloodthirsty maniacs. So we don't know if they were or not. However, sacrifices to placate the spirits are part of that as well. So all these ideas. So just that idea of having iron over your door is not seen as weird nowadays to have horseshoe symbology within weddings, but it all comes from this same thing. It's more about trying to stop the evil entering as well, which fits perfectly with Christianity, because you had the other side, like early Christianity as well. It still had this supernatural element to it. You still have these evil spirits. You still have demons. You still have the Catholic Church still does exorcisms. It's part of their thing, and that's the difference between Catholicism and Protestantism. Protestantism doesn't have that side of things, which goes back to what we were saying before. Why you get this more of a pushback from Protestantism than you do from Catholicism.
Look, man, look, I mean, we Dungeon Dan learned something new today. See, you never too old to learn. Yeah, and hey, Dungeon Dan, what's up, man? Thank you for coming on over. I wanted to read this from the History Channel as well. It says, by 43 A.D., the Roman Empire had conquered the majority of Celtic territory. In the course of the 400 years that they ruled the Celtic lands, two festivals of Roman origin were combined with the traditional Celtic celebration of Samhain. Well, but the thing is, he said 43 A.D. This was way before Christianity was even born. Christianity came around the 300 A.D. time period. Christianity.
And this is the thing is, people always forget that part of it's not Catholicism; it's Roman Catholicism.
Roman Catholic. See, that's why they call it the Roman Catholic Church.
And the because Catholic with a small c just means together. It means group of people who come together as well. Hence why they had to have this differentiator in front of it, because obviously you had the Orthodox Church at the time as well, and I won't get into it, but there were so many others around that came together for this. But when you have that, you have, I think, the Pontifex Maximus. It is a position that Caesar held. The Pope is called the Pontifex Maximus.
Right.
That's where Pope comes from. He's the Holy Father, the Father, hence Pope. It all comes from that same etymology as well. So these mixes of the Celtic ideas of it's Samhain or Samhain, when they mix together with these Roman festivals. The baths in Bath are a classic example. There's Sulis Minerva. We've talked about this before, where the Romans would add the Celtic pantheon onto their Roman pantheon and go, well, there's just a different aspect of the same god for them. So you end up with this merging. And then you end up with the Roman Catholic Church, which then picks up on a lot of these Roman ideas and these Roman holidays. And as like we talked about with Christmas, Sol Invictus, it's the same celebration over the same time, and it all sort of merges together. So you get this pull of these pagan ideas coming right into Catholicism. And part of and this go back to the divide between Catholicism and Protestantism. Protestantism was partly an effort to pull away from those ideas, those supernatural ideas, as it were, at the time, in a more rational. This is where we're getting the Enlightenment coming in, so you get more sort of secular ideals. This is why you find that divide, and why in horror films, generally, if you have a religion, have part of Christianity involved, 9 times out of 10,
Right.
it's Catholicism. It's very, very rarely Protestantism that is connected to it because of that connection, that divide that goes into it.
And then, so now to continue, how did Halloween start in America? Because it's kind of a complicated story because colonial America was a very different world. Don't forget, most of New England, what we call New England today, was Halloween was kind of hard to get started in New England. Why? Because Protestants. You had the Quakers, you had the Puritans. In fact, the Puritans, if you remember your history, the Puritans were in charge of trying to purify the Catholic Church in England.
Interesting side point here. England once had a constitution in the 1600s when we were a republic. It never got ratified, but one of the parts of the constitution was that no more than 5 Quakers could meet in one place at one time because they were too violent. Think about that one.
Right.
The Quakers were too violent. That's why the Quakers all went to the US.
But
the Quakerism was obviously changed. Meeting houses. Was it meeting houses? I can't remember the exact term for a Quaker place of worship as well. But yeah, that comes. It's really, really deep roots in Protestantism.
It's a quick tangent, Aidan. I wanted to ask you: have you ever read The Crucible?
No, I haven't actually.
By Arthur Miller.
No, I own a copy of Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verses, which I have never fully read. But
that's a good question for Dungeon Dan. I don't know if Dungeon Dan is watching. If Dungeon Dan you're watching, have you ever read The Crucible by Arthur Miller? It's quite. It was the Salem witch trials. It's a fictionalized story of the Salem witch trials, which took place in Massachusetts from 1692 to 1693. And it was quite the controversial book. I gotta tell you, it's definitely because witches is kind of pagan, but back then the Puritans you had the witch trials.
Because at the time that we're performing all of this, you got to remember, you got the Maleficarum comes out by Hans Kramer. He's a German witch hunter. This is where obviously all of the witch trials is. Weirdly enough, the UK, there wasn't much of that going on. I mean, we tried our last witch and convicted her in 1940 something. It was during the Second World War. Apparently, she was doing evil witchy things to help the Germans. It was in Scotland. And in fact, weirdly enough, that was one of the reasons for our Civil War. This whole connection with it was James I, hence the King James Bible. There's a lot of connection there with that. And the Salem witch trials comes out of all of that ethos of those people who were focused on that and this idea from Germany. Because obviously, in the US, there's a large proportion of Germans. This is slight tangent here, but in the First World War, one of the reasons for the US not joining early on was because a large proportion of the US was Germans who didn't speak English. German almost became the official language of the US at one point. It was so big. I think it was something like the majority of the papers, or the biggest amount of single language papers was actually German at that point as well. So you have this influx from Germany, but that's all happening at the same time as well. And it's people escaping all of the chaos that's happening in Germany over, you get like 30 years war, 7 years war, you get all of this stuff happening there. You've got all these witch trials going on at the same time. And that spreads through. So all of that then goes through and obviously travels through England. We weren't immune to this. It happened here as well. And that can, when you get people who are that deeply religious and believe those specific things about witches, this is how you get the Salem witch trials.
Yeah. Also, Dungeon Dance got an interesting one here. I want to stop here. It's my understanding that the American practice of Halloween until recently had not been part of European culture. Is it because we Americans commercialized it? It's an interesting point.
This is what we were talking about, wasn't it?
I mean, I can't answer my opinion, but maybe Aiden may have an answer.
Yeah. So, simple answer. Yes. If you look at the rise of US media, for example, the 90s is a really good place to see this with music, TV shows, the style of politics. Like, style of politics in the UK has become focused on the Prime Minister, but we don't vote our Prime Minister. But the focus of that has become very much like US elections. So you get this this idea because the Hollywood, essentially, as it all generally gets boiled down to, is spread so far with the US cultural ideas. And through that commercialization, which is sort of the 60s and the 70s, were the really big times where that sort of sped up. It's a very Cold War thing of the capitalism versus communism. So people went hyper-capitalist to make sure that they wouldn't be accused of being a communist. So you get this commercialization, and that comes over as well. So then you would also get people, the pushback on it is, well, if people are doing that, then we're going to celebrate this particular thing that is our culture on top of that. But then obviously that then gets mixed in at the same time. So you get this, as I said earlier, this original Halloween ideas coming from the Celtic fringe going into the US culture, and then it getting commercialized and then coming to Europe. And then those ideas in Europe that are still around becoming sort of a counterculture as well, that then gets mixed in as well. So you end up with take like Facebook. Every year on Facebook, you always have the story, that the Welsh Halloween story of the drunk horse ghost or whatever it is. Absolutely mental story, but it is part of that. But it's this pushback to get more traditionalism into it, which is obviously pushed by the pagans. But the church has never really done that pushback in it. I don't know how much in Catholic countries you get pushback. It might be, as Angel was saying, in conservative Christian areas, might be more pushback. But there might be more, say if you went to Italy, for example, they wouldn't celebrate Halloween like we would in a commercial manner. There could well be more of that. I don't know any Italians to ask, actually. That's a really, really interesting
it's a really
interesting point, actually. So I can only answer from a UK perspective, but us in the US are very, very similar in those aspects.
Right.
As well. So
I'm starting to believe the UK has really become just another United States, but in Europe.
Oh yeah, we're variously called the 51st state, or US's largest aircraft carrier. Is my favorite one.
You're Americans with a strange accent.
Yes. Just like the mountain people. Yeah. But yeah, I through a lot of internationally as well, it is very, you get the commercial aspect because that's the easiest bit to
although I do have a friend in Romania. Romania is kind of an interesting country. You know, they do have some horror. You know, don't forget you got Dracula and Hungary. Romania is kind of an interesting outlier. That because there's some Romanians who do take Halloween very seriously.
It's
you know,
very
it's
Catholic country as well,
in a very Catholic country.
which makes sense from what we were saying earlier. So.
Look, I would imagine France hates on Halloween. Germany probably digs it though, according to Dungeon Dan.
Yeah, Germany likes those type of things, and well, you've seen how many death metal bands have come out of Germany.
Yeah,
they're properly into Halloween.
I think it's fair to say Germany is becoming a little bit of Americanized as well. Germany has become a bit
Well,
of
yeah.
Americanized. I
Well,
mean, don't forget
40
they do
years
have.
the US owned Germany, really.
Don't forget that Germany has the highest English speaking population outside the UK. That's not America. Germany is not
Yeah,
an English speaking people.
that is the side story here. Very weird. So many years ago when I was at school, went to Cologne for the Christmas market, and we had to keep telling the Germans to stop speaking English because we needed to practice our German. And their English was better. They were correcting our English. God, it was insane. But yeah, it's absolutely amazing. It's they just switch, and it's barely accented as well. It is bizarre. It's utterly bizarre.
Mm-hmm. Right, it's crazy. I also the Netherlands is another interesting country. That the Netherlands, you know, had a very
They're
Catholic.
weird. They live below sea level. They're weird.
Yeah, they're a very Catholic centric nation. Although if you look up the Netherlands, religion's kind of interesting in the Netherlands. I gotta tell you, it's a very
So
interesting country when it comes to the
this
Netherlands.
goes back to the 1500s, which is around the same time that a lot of these things come out. So the Netherlands was called the Spanish Netherlands. It was a holding of this is when the Habsburgs and the Bourbons were at each other's throats. So the Habsburgs had the Holy
Mm-hmm.
Roman Empire, and they had Spain. Lots of obviously wars. The War of the Spanish Succession, which is starts November 1600. It's the first. Ironically, I think it's the 1st of November, which would be really appropriate, with the death of King Carlos II. And through that, the Netherlands Spanish holdings, you get this strip of smaller countries across northern France that are hemming the French in. They then get broken up and changed, and the Spanish Netherlands becomes the Netherlands. Obviously, Spain was very, very Catholic.
Yes.
Columbus was funded by the selling of indulgences, which is actually what split the church and created Protestantism as well, which is a weird part of history, but we should go into it at a different time because that is a mental
Right.
part of history. But that's where you get this strong Catholicism going on in the Netherlands, because it was part of this 1500s empire. It was a holdout against Protestantism, which obviously came through Germany down into Switzerland, into southern France, up France into the UK, and obviously hit against those Spanish holdings as well because of the conflicts around that time as well, which could go some way to explaining how they've got a strange relationship with Halloween.
I also wanted to point this out, Aiden. When it comes to religion in the Netherlands, they did a survey on the census. Over 55% of people in the Netherlands are in religious. They don't believe in any religion.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
So if you think from that area, the sort of modernized. Weirdly enough, there's a joke on our census about our census in the UK that the if in doubt put Church of England, which a lot of people do. And in the church, when I used to serve at altar, I was part of church and church council things. I was heavily part of the church, and we used to call them hatch, match, and dispatch. So you'd come in to have a child christened because that was the thing to do. So baptism, it's Church of England, christening, baptism, same thing. Christening's Catholic, baptism's Protestant, but Church of England's a weird one. Match, weddings, and dispatch, funerals, and that's the only times those people would go to church. On those, occasionally Christmas, or if there was an event or something, but you end up with the people have this weird relationship. They will say that they're atheists all across Europe, but they have this weird relationship with Christianity or any divine that you wish. That they have beliefs, but then they'll just default in some countries like Netherlands and go, well, I'm an atheist. But then more likely, a large proportion are probably agnostic, which is fallen out of belief, not opposed to belief. Not the atheism's more. It definitely isn't happening. Agnostics, show me some evidence and some stuff. I'm not going to argue against it. Type of level, but obviously there's no section for that on any forms as well.
But meanwhile, you look at England, right? The religion, according to the 2021 census of England, close to 50% of people are Christianity, but yet you got a big portion of English people who have no religion. The 36.7% are in religion in England.
And
so
this is another
it kind of backs up your point that you just made. Surprisingly, there's another other religion like Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam is actually pretty popular in England as well.
So that's an empire factor as well. So obviously, a lot of Indians and Pakistanis over here is where you're getting a lot of the Islam and the Hinduism as well. Which, to get onto the Halloween point, is very interesting that I live in Reading. Reading is actually more multicultural than London. Weirdly enough, it's more languages are spoken in the town that I live in, London. They won't make us a city because we're weird. They don't like us. We're bigger than most cities. But along with that, you will see like groups of kids going out to do trick or treating, and there might be and it'll be a complete mix of all different ethnic and religious backgrounds of people. So, and this goes to what Dan was asking about earlier, commercialization, and that's commercialization part of it. Of it's not a Christian festival, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it as well. That you have people going out and doing trick or treat. Trick or treating is not, and trick or treating isn't actually anything to do with religion, really. It's just legalized begging, to be honest. So
I think trick or treating might be the commercial side of Halloween. That's where the commercial comes in.
But it makes people put up really cool lawn decorations and actually makes it a fun event and gets the kids outside and going around and putting on costumes and stuff like that. My general attitude to things like that is, are they having fun? Yes. Well, let them do it. As well. I presume there's not much trick-or-treating around your area, Angel?
No, sadly not. Although there's something else I wanted to bring up. Halloween was also known back then as harvest season. It was a celebration of the harvest. Halloween.
Because you celebrate the beginning of harvest, and you celebrate the end of the harvest as well.
Yeah, you celebrate the bounty of your work, your bounty of the harvest, and and now you have enough food for the winter. You get to sleep in for the winter and relax, and until the summer begins again, and then you go right back to the planting, and it's one
of the really interesting things. People think that it's often portrayed in winter. Oh, well, they're the hard months, and no one has any food. Actually, winter was when people had all of the food because the harvest had come in. People had loads of food over the winter. It's the very end of winter and actually into spring. And that's why you get spring festivals, because, oh my dear God, we're running out of food. Oh, good. There's some more food coming available, so you can pick your berries.
If anything, winter was the month where you had the logging industry became, will step up logging, the timber. You cut down trees for fires and all that, and to build homes, So it's a different kind of industry that takes place. And don't forget, in the winter, you can still go fishing. You can still fish.
Yeah. And then if you're in a really cold climate, you can do ice fishing, which is
ice fishing. Yeah, exactly.
That's something I'd like to try sometime as well.
Yeah.
But this goes back to what we were talking about with this. It's this change in seasons as well, and these festivals happen around this change of season. Like I'm British. I always say about the weather when we come on, but this is one of those that's connected to that now our weather is changing. I've started wearing people up north would like
Uh-huh.
this. I'm wearing my big coat. The because it's just got that little bit colder. It's when people are starting to think about putting the heating on. People are changing what they do. The windows are going to be closed. You'll open the windows to air the house out, but then you'll make sure they're closed afterwards and do that less. You'll like you have a spring clean when it comes to this time of year. You're sorting out your house, but you're going to spend more time inside because outside's horrible as well. So you get all of this connected into Halloween, this idea of your home. You're setting up your home for the winter. So you need to protect your home from all these spirits, because the last thing you want to do when you close your door is the robber being inside. It's the same thing with the evil spirits, and this goes back to what I was saying about the iron above the door and those type of concepts. Is you want to make that a safe place, therefore you don't want that coming inside. So the Halloween festival is right, cool. We've got all of our food, we've stored it all away. Right, the evil spirits have turned up. Right, get rid of all of them, and then we can go and do what we want to do, and have our build up to Christmas. Because apparently, yes, we have to put Christmas things on the shelves these days, really early on. But I find it really quite interesting how Halloween is one of these ones that's seen as it's commercial and there's no religious aspect to it. And when there is religious aspect, it's seen as a pagan religious aspect of it as well. Whereas there's this big Christian element to it as well. But I think this goes back to what we were saying before about the difference between Catholicism and Protestantism. When you get to this, in Catholicism, it's a thing. You're talking about these things, but in Protestantism, that's not part of the thing at all. So if it's brought up, it's like, oh, well, that's a Catholic thing. We don't do that around here. And therefore, you push against Halloween because either it's pagan or it's Catholic. So it's not us, which could be that Protestant conservatism that we talked about as well.
Right. Mm-hmm. I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about another idea. Horror media, such as horror books and horror movies, right? That wasn't really much of a thing until the 70s and 80s. So I got a theory saying that the reason you're getting an even more pushback now is because of the horror movies out there, like Scream, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. Do you believe that the American media has kind of pushed this idea that Halloween is about evil and all this and blood and gore and all that, and it kind of got away from the true meaning of the holiday because of these horror movies, these horror books, Stephen King, Dean Koontz. They kind of reinvented what horror could be.
Yeah, I think you're on the money there. That you've got this said about the commercialization, and it's sort of, as I said, it's the 60s and the 70s.
I would have done to Dan. I mean, feel free to jump on this too. Yeah.
Yeah. Dungeon Man's probably got some good insights on this as well. And I do think you're entirely right. So you think about The Exorcist. How much backlash did that have?
The Exorcist. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously one of the earliest films. Like today, we'll watch it and it's like, all right, okay, it's still a good film, but it's not exactly scary to us as well because we've been sort of desensitized by all of this other horror that we've seen and all of the many genres of horror. Now, with that though, you think is part of the, as you said, the pushback. Do you think that is possibly also linked to then because it's Hollywood? Because obviously a lot of the strict conservatives tend to be right wing, and Hollywood seen as very left wing. Hollywood has done this, therefore it is wrong. And that's just got amalgamated into it and suddenly become part of.
It's like a perfect alchemy of white against left. It's like the perfect alchemy, if you ask me.
Well, you could tell which wing I'm on because of the amount of pumpkins in my background, but because our house is permanently Halloween. One year we put up Halloween decorations, and it took us 2 years to take them down, and no one noticed. Apparently, that's our type of house as well. And we do love our horror stuff in this house. Well, I say we. My wife is far more horror than I am, weirdly enough.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it does become a situation where in modern society and these days, not necessarily ancient times, but modern, it has become more of a white versus left. I mean, I'm not politically involved. I mean, I can care less about politics. I think it's the absolute root of evil. But there is a white against left kind of thing. And look, his Dungeon Dan says we have changed the entire meaning of the event. It's all about money and evil. Yeah, so it's kind of the perfect paradox, Aiden, for me, because I'm a horror author. I write about these things, right? Meanwhile, I'm criticizing on why people have a stigma against Halloween. Meanwhile, I'm part of the reason why writing all these books. Don't you think that's the perfect paradox?
Well, that's I forgot what the term is. That humans are the eternal paradox.
Right.
We can hold
Yeah.
the term for being able to hold two completely different beliefs at exactly the same time. Contradictory. Humans can do that.
I'm sorry. I never thought we would do a Halloween episode and we would bump into such a paradox. I never thought that would be a word we use in Halloween. The Halloween paradox. That should be the name of the episode. The Halloween paradox.
Oh, most certainly. But I just find it really interesting. But to go back to something I said earlier as well, where I said about sort of the crucifix versus the cross, when you're talking about Catholicism and Protestantism, with Halloween, it's the same thing. Is you go back to the roots of Halloween and what I was saying about we're trying to scare the spirits away. So theoretically, then Protestantism should be all for it, and people going around wearing scary costumes to get rid of the evil, whereas Catholicism should be more whatever. It's around. Let's just do the standard religious things.
This Dungeon Dan time to make me feel better. And I mean, yeah, you're kind of right, Dungeon. Yeah, me telling tales. It does get wrapped up in the capitalist. I think another aspect is that America is capitalist. And the UK too is capitalist. You guys are we're capitalist countries. So yeah, everything tends to be about money.
We kind of invented it. That's why. That's it's one of our.
So yeah, that's another thing about Halloween.
Here's another contradictory thing that goes along with this. Capitalism was invented to help the poor.
What was that?
Capitalism was invented to help the poor and stop the country.
Yeah, go figure, right?
It's obviously turned into what it is, but it's but a poignant statement would be the religion of the US is actually capitalism, not Christianity.
You know what the word I was thinking of earlier? Thieves. What we pay 1/10 of annual production of earnings, formerly taken as a tax to support the church.
Oh, tithes.
Yes.
Yeah. I knew it was in there somewhere.
Tithes. Yeah, So it's crazy that the Catholic Church it started out, like you said, to help the poor, but yet it became a money-making machine.
Yeah, and humans are weird. We're just weird.
We have done it with every celebrated holiday, and now forced to over. Yeah, I guess the same thing could be saying about Thanksgiving and Black Friday, or Christmas, or even Easter. Even Easter's become commercial too.
Yeah.
And don't get me started on Valentine's Day, which might be the biggest ripoff of all, the Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day and diamonds on rings at weddings was invented by, was it De Beers, the diamond people? It's like, most diamonds are actually just held in massive repositories so they can keep control of the price. It's the same thing. Valentine's Day is all about that as well. And actually, Valentine's Day is supposed to be goes back to the theme, Saint Valentine. It's another a part of Christianity that's been morphed into a commercial aspect of it as well. It's this the strong Christianity in the US that it's standard marketing. You've got to market to people. If people are Christians, you've got to market
And
something.
there's me. We have discovered one of the great paradoxes.
Yep, we have. It's we've been taking apart the human condition this episode. This has got very, very deep, hasn't it?
I guess the reason I did this is because I want people to understand what Halloween is really about and how it's changed over the years. The actual history of Halloween. You know, it started off like a Celtic holiday to celebrate transitions for seasons and to celebrate. I don't want to say celebrate death, but acknowledge that death was a real thing. And now it's become this commercial, multi-billion-dollar commercial holiday, like Dungeon Dan was saying. It's become a multi-billion-dollar day. I mean, yeah. In fact, horror authors like us, we love Halloween. We love October. We
Great
love
time
it.
to release a book as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at me. They're like, stepping into the fire.
But to me, it's one of the interesting things as well. Also, being from a church background,
Right.
You obviously Church of England. It was more when I was younger. It was more the Protestant version. The RF does a more Protestant version of it. But even when it was High Church, Church of England, which is the more Catholic side of it, that you didn't really get that complete Catholic element of the remembering of the saints. It wasn't really pushed as a specific thing. I mean, the different vestments that it was one of the times you change colours on what the vicar wears. I'm really struggling not to say Padre because I grew up with RAF church and it's all Padre, and I don't know why it's Padre in the RAF, so don't ask. But yeah.
And here goes Dungeon Dan. When I was young, Halloween and Day of the Dead were two different celebrations from different countries. These days, they have, for the most part, merged. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, that's another good point in this, where it spread and then it sort of like it's pulled things together of this as well. And the Day of the Dead is another one of these examples of something very similar, hence why it's been pulled in. And that goes back to pagan ideals of the veil being blurred at that time as well. And that's something going on in my house tonight. But it's this is. I think Dungeon Dan's got it right. The way we see Halloween these days is commercial. We see it's commercial. Halloween, the first things you think of are costumes, trick or treating, pumpkins. Or go and buy some sweets, candy for the US.
Or media.
Yeah.
Or the movies, books.
Yeah,
media.
Yeah.
I mean, video games like Resident Evil, Silent Hill.
Yeah. And it all comes.
I feel like it's. I see, and this is the thing, Dungeon Dan. This is what I'm trying to say. It's the great paradox, but it's kind of damaging because it's causing a loss of individual cultures. You're right. That's become so like for example, Christmas. I don't feel Christmas feels the same to me anymore. It's become so commercialized, Mike. It doesn't feel like Christmas no more, like when I was a kid.
Well, it's my favourite part of Christmas lead up in the church was always Christingle. It's the oranges and the sweets on it. That's that gave a Christmassy feel to it. That there was a Christmassy feel. And
here in Puerto Rico, you had the people walking around singing in your house. The calendars, they come to your house singing Christmas music in Spanish. People enjoy that in Puerto Rico. They don't do that no more. It's because and it's sad because Christmas here in Puerto Rico is a beautiful holiday here. I mean, Halloween's not big here, but Christmas is beautiful. And then we have Three Kings Day. It's a beautiful day, man. But and we kind of, missing all that. We kind of gotten rid of that because of all the commercialness.
I'm wondering as well. It's like where Dungeon Dan mentioned the sort of the Day of the Dead. This comes back to a very poignant comment there.
Yeah,
This
blunt
comes
but
back
true.
to what I was saying earlier about the slight pushback against commercialization of in the UK, bringing back the pagan ideals of Samhain coming into it and going, no, this is about this, and showing this as part of traditions. And then they've been brought into it as well. And it's one of the things that people often forget is that there was sort of paganism's always been around. And paganism's weird because paganism isn't a religion as such. It's an amalgamation of traditional religions under one title to make it easier to talk about. So you get these sort of little pockets of it around in different areas with slightly different beliefs, and they'll bring it up. So you get these little quirks as well. And I would actually, this could be a weird connection here, link it to the traditional Christmas dinner or even the fried breakfast in the UK. You go to a different place in the UK, the fried breakfast will include ever so slightly different things, but it'll always be called the fried breakfast. With a Christmas dinner in the US, obviously big on the whole turkey side of it, whereas in the UK we generally have a chicken. We do turkey because US, but generally you'd have a chicken. But that wouldn't be necessarily. You'd have a main meat dish. You'd have all of the other dishes alongside it. Obviously, the celebration of food at that time of year. But you get this again with Halloween, where if you go to different areas, you get this pockets of where there's been pushback. You get this pull into it, and there's been one that's been pulled into it so far that it's now become part of Halloween rather than just a sort of a local pushback of keeping this the local traditions and these cultural aspects of it alive. But in a way, it's kind of good that it's been brought into Halloween rather than the commercial side of it dampening everything down. They've brought in these little aspects so everyone can go this and then go, oh, why is that a thing? And then go, oh, that's really cool. That comes from here. So it keeps those bits of individual culture alive to a certain extent rather than being trampled over and forgotten. While they may have morphed, people can still go back and have a look at them. At the very least, it keeps it alive to a certain extent. It's the silver lining, as it were, of it.
Right.
People can acknowledge that that's a thing. Like jack-o'-lanterns, well, where does this come from? And you go all the way back to the carving of turnips in Ireland, and oh, that's where that comes from. So that's a tradition from that place that we have adopted as well. So there's some goods in the fact that because we have this commercialization, that these individual cultural parts have been brought into it, and that we can essentially all celebrate Halloween in a variety of different ways, and then kind of pick and choose of which bits of it that we want to celebrate or not.
Yeah, but anyway, Aiden, wow, we've gone over the hour. Yeah, so yeah, this was a really fun topic to talk about, man. I'm, you know, and you know, I hope those who watched it kind of know something about Halloween and how the history has been a very funny one. It's been a really interesting look into the history of Halloween. Before we go, I want to remind you that we are still working on the charity anthology. We are still working on it. We have no release date yet. We're hoping to get it done for October this month, but things happen. Unfortunately, have slowed down the process. But we'll keep you updated when we do get that out. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Aiden, this was a really fun one to do with you.
It was.
And
it really was.
Dan, thank you for your input, and thank you to Jerry, the other guest, for putting his input. This has been the Anxious Maximus podcast. We'll see you. And before we go, I wanted to bring this up by Dungeon Dan. Candy wasn't something available back to everyone back in the day, but it is now. Turkey was the most abundant meat source here yet. Now all countries eat it. Yeah. It's a good point. It's a really good point, Dungeon Dan. And thank you, Dungeon Dan. Great show. Yes, it was a great show. So we're going to see you in a couple of weeks with another interesting one. And Dungeon Dan says we should do a Viking show or Petra show.
Oh, my dad went to Petra. You got a T-shirt as well. That's one of those
Yeah,
weird things.
we might
How
actually
great
do the
it is.
Vikings next. We might actually
Yeah.
do a few scouts and
Oh, Vikings. Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, that'll probably be our next show. Yeah, so book it, guys. In a couple of weeks, we'll be back. We'll be talking about Leif Erikson and the Vikings, the Norse. That should be a fun
Yeah.
topic. So yeah, okay. So come back in a couple of weeks, and we're gonna have some that, and we got some new digs in Petra.
Oh, I'll have to look that one up.
So we got to look that up. We can sneak it on in. So yeah, check us in a couple of weeks, guys. We got some research to do. We got some work to do. We'll be right back here in a couple of weeks. This has been Centurion Angelus Maximus. That has been the Gate, Aiden Cordier. This has been the Age of Warfare podcast. We'll see you guys on the next show.